So my name's Lori, and I'm one of the pastors here, and we're so glad that you came here today. This is the last day of our relationship series. If this is your first time, you can go online and listen to all the ones before, because it's been a really good series. Relationships are very important to Westlight. It's how we define, how we live out our vision, and how we define experiencing heaven together. And as you can tell from the bumper, we've been going through looking at how, God the Father and God the Spirit and Jesus, how they help us, how they relate to one another. They model for us how we need to and how we can relate to one another. And so today we're talking about trust. And trust is very important. The Webster Dictionary defines it as this. It's the reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. And so relationships require trust. And trust is something that's not freely given, but it's something that needs to be earned. And I have a story to tell you as an example. So when I was 16, I took driver's ed, and I took driver's training, and I was ready to get my license. And so I told my parents, I'm ready to get my license. And they're like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I'm ready to get my license. And I don't remember this. I blocked it out of mind. But I must have bugged them a lot. Because when they went on vacation, my older sister was like, come on, let's go to the DMV. I'm going to take you. I don't think I was that, charming and wooed her into taking me. I think she was just tired of hearing me whine and complain and, bug my parents. So she took me to the DMV. And I barely passed, but I did. And when my parents came home from vacation, I surprised them with my license. And, they were like, oh no. And so, when I took my license test, when I got to my driver's test, I took my dad's station wagon. That was automatic. But, next week I want to go out with my friend. But my dad needs the car for work. So I was like, Mom, let me take your Mazda RX-2, this manual that's kind of sporty and fun to drive. And she's like, no. And I was like, come on, Mom. My friend Donna and I, we want to see a movie. Let's go. Come on, trust me, Mom. Trust me. I got my license. Trust me. And she's like, no, and time is going by, and the Dodger game's on, and she's like kind of getting comfy in her couch. And I was like, come on, Mom, we want to see the movie. And she's like, all right, just go, but be careful. I was like, of course, trust me. I am going to be careful. I got my license. I'm 16. So I get in the car, I rush out. Donna lives like a few blocks away. So I'm driving, speeding around the corners. It's kind of sporty. It was sporty back then. And I get into her driveway, and I go and I run on, and I knock on the door, and like, come on, let's go. And so we get in the car, and we're like, yeah, we're going to go. We're free. Let's do this, And so I'm backing out, and I press on the clutch, and I press on the gas, and I let the clutch out too early, and then the gas was gone, and I back up, and I hit the car parked in front of Donna's house. So, trust is not something that's freely given. It needs to be earned, okay? And so we're going to look at how the Holy Spirit and God and Jesus, how they trusted one another. And when you start reading the Bible and you think about through the lens of trust, there's so many examples, but I just picked 3 out for you today. We're not going to go through the whole Bible. So the first one we're going to look at is the Transfiguration. And Jesus, he took Peter and James and John, and they go up to the mountain, and they're like, they just want to be by themselves. And at that moment, right, Jesus, he kind of shows his glory, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes, they were so bright, they shone like as white as light. And then Moses and Elijah come, and they see Jesus talking to them. And then a bright cloud overshadows them, and a voice from the cloud comes, and it says, this is my dear son, and I'm delighted with him. Pay attention to him. You see, if God didn't trust Jesus with this movement, God didn't trust Jesus to come down and start this movement and bring his new kingdom in, he wouldn't have said, pay attention to him. He trusted him to carry on his movement. And then, Jesus goes on with his ministry, and he gets towards the end of his ministry. He knows that he's going to see his Father soon. He knows he's going to go back and be with his Father. And so he gets the disciples together, and he's like trying to get them ready. He's preparing them because, he's going to go. And he's like, okay, you guys, I'm going to go to be with my Father soon. And they're like, huh? And they're like, no, I'm going to be with my Father soon, but don't worry, because you're going to be a little persecuted. No, you're going to be a lot persecuted. You know how people are after me and they want to kill me? Well, when I go to be with my Father, you guys are like my followers, they're going to want to get you. But don't worry. He says this, if you love me. I love that he says, if you love me. Because love is the foundation of everything, of why we have our faith, right? He doesn't say, if you want to be good, if you want to overpower the Roman Empire, if you want justice in your life. No, he says, if you love me. It's all about the love. If you love me, you will keep my commands. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever. And this other helper is the Spirit of truth. And the world can't receive him because it doesn't see him or doesn't know him. But you know him because he lives with you and will be in you. You see, the Holy Spirit hadn't come yet. That comes later after Jesus' death and resurrection and ascension. But Jesus trusts that the Holy Spirit is going to come and he's going to just empower them. And he tells them later in John, when the Holy Spirit comes, you think we did great things. You guys are going to do even greater things when the Holy Spirit comes. And he trusts that the Holy Spirit is going to raise him from the dead, and he trusts that he's going to take over this new way of doing things, and it's and he just believes in all the things that are going to happen. He trusts in the Holy Spirit. And then finally, in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus you see how he trusts his Father. The night before Jesus was arrested, he's upset and he's distressed. And the Bible tells us that his soul is overwhelmed with grief. And he feels like he's going to die. Have you ever felt like that? Like the grief is so much, you feel like you just can't go on. Like there's no way that you're going to make it through the next moment because the grief is just so overwhelming. And that's what Jesus was experiencing. And so he asked Peter, James, and John to go with him and to pray. And so they go up to the Gethsemane and they're praying. And he's like, you guys stay here. I'm going to go over here. And just as he's alone, he falls down on his face and he starts praying because he's in so much pain and in so much agony. And he asks his Father, if it's possible, please, please, let this cup go away from me. But not what I want, but what you want. He's like, this is so hard, but I'm going to trust in you. And I don't know how God could say no. I don't know how if he said, no, I'm sorry. I mean, how could you say no? Your son is in pain and in agony, and he's overwhelmed. But somehow we know that God said no because Jesus asks a second time. And he says, my Father, if it's possible for this cup, for this to pass unless I drink it, let your will be done. And I don't know how God did it, but he's like, no. Because we know he said no, because Jesus asks a third time using the same words. And I love what Luke, the way he describes it. He says, that when Jesus was praying, God sent an angel to come down to be with him, to strengthen him. And he was praying so hard that it was like drops of blood, like blood clots were falling from his head and down to the ground. It says an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him. And by now he was in agony, and he prayed very fervently, and his sweat became like clots of blood falling on the ground. And I think this is so important for us to understand. That, we get that trust is earned, when someone's faithful, when someone's responsible and they do what they say they're going to do. We get that trust is, that someone's trustworthy when they have integrity. But this, that's kind of obvious. We get that. But what I want us to get here, this is the key of how we can earn people's trust. It's what's not so obvious, and how God earns Jesus' trust. Because in the moment of his agony, when he's like, oh, do I have to do this? God sends an angel to be with him. An angel who is probably reminding him, man, your father, he's watching you. Your father loves you. And he's comforting him, and he's strengthening him, and he's encouraging him to get through the next day or whatever, the future, that the mocking, the torture, and the suffering. He doesn't devalue what Jesus says. He doesn't come down. God doesn't send an angel to lecture him. He doesn't say, you know what, Jesus, it's just 24 hours. Come on, you can do this. It's 24 hours, right? He doesn't say, Jesus, you're strong. Come on, just do it. Suck it up and do it. He doesn't say, you are the Son of God. N.T. Wright calls what happened to Jesus in the in the Gethsemane as he was in meltdown mode. So, he's not like, hey, you can't melt down now. You've lived this whole life here. You're 33 years old. Be a man. Let's do this. You know the plan. You knew the plan from the very beginning. Let's do this. Get up and do it. No. God sends the angel to come and be with him, and who is for him. And that's how we earn trust. We listen, and we understand, and we empathize with one another. God sent an angel to be his agent of love and grace. He demonstrated care. He valued Jesus so much and let him know that he mattered to God. He was for Jesus. He was with Jesus no matter what, even when he was in meltdown mode. Jesus, God was on Jesus' side. And so, relationships, they require trust, and that trust needs to be earned. And that trust looks like us being with one another, being for one another no matter what. It involves, and how that happens is when, listening and understanding and empathizing. Trust, it can't exist where there's failure to empathize, where there's failure to listen and understand. We've seen that. We've seen companies, if you're at your workplace, and if employees don't feel listened to or understood or valued, what do? They go find another job, right? People come to church, and if they don't feel listened to or understood or empathized with, what do? They go find another church. Right? Kids, if the kids don't feel like their parents listen to them or understand them or empathize with them, if they just get lectures, what do? They go find friends or people who will listen to them, who will understand them. And hopefully it's friends that you approve of. But like me, it was friends that they didn't approve of. But we just go to wherever we feel understood. And husbands and wives, if we don't listen to one another and try to understand and empathize with one another, a lot of times people, we all do this. We'll disconnect because we're like, well, we're not valued here. And we disconnect. And that's how a lot of times we go where we feel we're understood, where we feel like we're seen and valued. And that's a lot of times how affairs start. And so where there's no trust, where there's no listening and understanding and empathizing, there can be no relationship. So we need to be people of love and grace if we want to create this, cultivate this trust between one another. I love what Henry Cloud said. If you guys know, I quote him every sermon. But he's a Christian counselor. And he says that people do not trust us when we understand them. People do not trust us when we understand them. They trust us when they understand that we understand them, right? When they understand that we understand them, then that's when trust can begin to is earned. An example of this is the boys that were trapped in the cave in Thailand. Okay, I don't know what it was like for them. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like. You're starting, you had practice, you're having fun, you're with your friends, you're exploring the cave. I mean, what better day is that? They were going to go to a birthday party afterwards. I mean, it was just going to be the best day ever. And then they go further, the water starts coming in, and they get trapped in this cave, and it's dark. And they're together, but it's cold. And it starts getting late, and they get hungry. And then they start to wonder, oh man, are we ever going to get out of here? And I can't imagine how scared they were. And then how relieved they were when the rescuers found them. And I love, they're like, hey, are we going to get out today? And then the rescuers are like, no, it's going to take a while. But I love what they did. They're stuck in the cave. They're trapped. They're scared. They're hungry. They're tired. And they're, afraid. They're terrified. And what do? They send in a medic to stay with them. They send in expert divers to stay with them. Those guys stayed with them, checked on them. They, cared for them. They gave them blankets and foods. And they were there to make sure that they were okay. They didn't say, wow, this is dangerous and it's kind of scary. You guys stay here. We're going to go back and we'll pray for you because God has a plan. No, they didn't do that, right? They stayed with them. They went in the cave and stayed with them. And during the rescue, you guys saw, right? They had oxygen tanks planted everywhere. They had rope. They had people lined up during the rescue. So when the boys had to leave, they had people all along the way checking on them. And I just, they had a team that was with them, that was for them, that was getting, letting them, helping them with the rescue so that they could go back to their family and have life. And we know that one of the Navy SEAL, ex-Navy SEAL drivers, right, that he lost his life. He gave his life so that they could have life. What greater demonstration of love is that? And so earning trust, I bring that up, is because it's a lot like those rescue people who went into the cave. We need to be people who are not standing up far away and being like, we'll pray for you, or get up, or suck it up and just do it. You're going through a hard time. That's, I feel you. But, we need to be people who will get in the cave with one another, who will have the courage to do the hard thing and to sit with them and to be with one another and to be for one another. That's what earning trust looks like. We don't stand outside. We don't judge. We don't condemn. One of the the coach was really worried when they started sending out letters. The parents would write letters to the kids, and the kids would write letters back. And there's a story of him just kind of dreading it because he thought that the parents would be, just reprimand him. Like, why did you let this happen? And this is all your fault. But the letters that he received were letters of appreciation. And they were loving on him. And thank you so much for being with our boys. We appreciate you so much. And that's what earning trust looks like. When we can listen and understand and empathize. When we could be with one another and be for one another no matter what. So when your 16-year-old daughter comes home and says she got in a little embarrassing fender bender, you won't have to hear, she won't have to hear, well, I told you weren't ready. Or, cars kill people. You could have killed yourself and your friend. Or, do you know how disappointed I am in you that you took my fast car that I love and you hit a parked car? Getting into the cave means you sit with them and you listen and you seek to understand and you empathize. And it's more like, you hear the story of the 16-year-old daughter saying, I really wanted to take Donna out because Donna, she was born in January and she's been driving us around for 10 months, 11 months. And Donna's feeling kind of used. And she feels like we're only friends with her because she can drive us around. And I really wanted to take the car out so I could take Donna to a movie because it was just going to be me and Donna. And I wanted to show her appreciation, that we don't just want to be with her because she can drive us around. And it would have been so cool, if my parents said, oh, man, I get that. man, I validate those feelings. That you were, you were a good friend. And you know what? I'm with you. I hear you, and I'm for you. And you know what? For the next few weeks, I'm going to take you driving, so we both can trust one another. And you are going to be a good driver, even though you're an Asian woman. And we're going to trust, and you can drive your friends around, because we are with you, and we are for you. And so relationships require trust. And we earn trust by getting in the cave and being with others and being for others no matter what. And it starts with us, right? So many of us have experienced so much where it's really hard to trust. And so I really invite you this week to just, as we move forward, to just, set time this week to just maybe have coffee by yourself and just think about, when you think about trust, what feelings come to mind? Maybe the Spirit will bring a memory to you, or you'll have a feeling of like, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable. Or maybe it's like, oh, no, I'm glad I have people to trust. Or maybe it's like, oh, I need to trust my husband more. Or, oh, I need to trust my parents more. Or, oh, I need to trust my teenager more. But whatever comes up, whatever feeling comes up, don't judge it. Don't say, oh, I'm a Christian, I shouldn't feel like that. Or, oh, I should trust my husband. Or, oh, just feel it, accept it, sit with it. And then ask the Spirit or ask yourself, like, what are these feelings telling me? And let the Spirit just lead you. And know that He's with you and that He's for you. And He's inviting you to trust in Him. He wants to earn your trust because He loves you so much. We're going to enter into a time of worship, and so I'm going to ask the worship team to come forward. And we're just going to spend this time. This time is for you. And if you feel like, man, I have a hard time trusting, and we're going to sing about God's reckless love, and it doesn't feel like reckless love to me, then I invite you just to sit and just struggle with God, and just bring that to mind and just, just say, Lord, I don't feel it. I know, Lord talks about how Jesus came down and the Holy Spirit's here. Thank you. And how, you came to be with us and you're for us, and I don't feel it. Then just, you can sit with the Lord with that. Or maybe you came back from camp and you're like, yeah, Jesus is awesome. He does love us. He pursues us. He goes in the cave. He gave his life for us, and you just want to proclaim Jesus' reckless love. Then feel free to stand up and just sing your heart out. But this time is for you. And then after we sing, we'll enter into a time of communion. But let's go into worship now.